Dr. Carole is on now. Dr. Carole Lieberman.
She's coming in.
Oh, hi, Dr. Carole. It's always a pleasure to see you. You're always in the pink. I love your advice. Your room brightens me up, and your face brightens up the room. How's that? You're America's favorite psychiatrist, and I don't have a psychiatrist. You're my favorite psychiatrist. How's that? Long distance.
Thank you. Compliments.
Yeah, today we're going to discuss about its year's anniversary of the Floyd tragedy. No matter how you look upon it, it is a tragedy. A lot of people want changes in America, and a lot of people have PST as well. What is your take on it? How do you reconcile both factions and move forward?
Well, first of all, a lot of people will have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, even though, it used to be thought that you could only technically have PTSD if you were personally threatened in a life-threatening situation. But they discovered after 9/11 that, in fact, if you watch hours and hours of television where over and over again, like in that situation, it was of the Twin Towers falling.
Oh,
but
yes.
if you watched, and who couldn't have helped but watch hours and hours about the George Floyd murder, the George Floyd trial. I mean, it has been 2020 and 2021 has been George Floyd all the time. So this could, for some people, it will in fact give them PTSD, which means, first of all, they will have intrusive thoughts about whatever they have seen about George Floyd. They will have intrusive dreams, perhaps, in addition to the memories. They might avoid things, for example, trying to avoid talking about it. They'll have negative and distorted alterations in their thinking and mood. So, for example, they might think some people are feeling guilty, like white people in particular, who have been.
I was just going to ask you the perspective of white, black, and brown. You started that.
Well, brown is sort of in the middle, I guess. But white people, there are a lot of white people who feel strongly about, that George Floyd was murdered, that all of the police involved should be severely punished and so on, and feel, this whole critical race theory thing. That's a whole other issue that has seeped into the schools. So, a lot of white people, white supremacy, we've been hearing these words.
Exactly. Antifa, white supremacy, poor boys. Frankly, I want to be a rich boy. I don't care. I don't want to be a poor boy. But, seriously about this, do you foresee better times ahead, or it's going to take longer to reconcile? You're brilliant. What's your take on that?
Well, I have a very bad feeling about the future because Black Lives Matter, another thing that has just happened with the Israel-Palestinian war.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter came out and supported the Palestinians. And soon after they announced that, there were riots in the streets, pro-Palestinian riots in the streets.
Times Square, yeah.
All in Los Angeles as well.
Exactly.
And some of the people were carrying banners that said, "We can't breathe" since 1948, which is the year that Israel became a state. So clearly Black Lives Matter is behind the pro-Palestinian riots as well. Black Lives Matter just want to create anarchy in the U.S. And so whether it's about George Floyd or whether it's about the Palestinians, they are trying to ruin the traditional American family and to create anarchy so that socialism, Marxism can come in. And they have become, I don't know if they have something on Biden. I don't really think who knows? But, did you hear about how Biden has sent the State Department technically sent out a memo saying that embassies all over the world should fly the Black Lives Matter banner and in recognition of George Floyd's anniversary and so on. It's just gotten crazy because people don't understand that Black Lives Matter is not just a benevolent organization that wants to help Blacks and go against racism, and who could be against that. They have these much deeper, more serious Marxist, they admit, roots. And so this is, and apparently they're getting more and more power. It's begun to come out more and more that they have insidiously gotten into all the schools with their curriculum that are teaching. Parents don't even realize. I actually didn't realize until more recently about just how far it has come. And so, kids are being taught that they're racist, that they're white supremacists, and that is causing more racism than not having that. Plus, people are racist against Blacks or Chinese or whatever race if they fear them. It's based upon fear. And so when there are these violent, these so-called protests that are really riots, when these things happen, it makes people more racist because they become more afraid of Blacks.
Now, is it also somewhat afraid of an economic twist to it too? Poor whites are afraid that Blacks may take their jobs. What if we had a certain standard of living for everybody? Would racism go away, or does the economic policy have anything to do with racism?
You mean what if it was totally? With Biden's handouts. Unemployment handouts where people are now not going to work, they're just sitting home and getting the handouts. I mean, is that what you mean? Like if everybody...
Excuse me, I'm going to work now. Okay, bye. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Basically, for instance, the minimum wage. If Blacks and whites at the lower economic scale all made $15 an hour, would, for instance, Blacks be less angry at whites that they're making more? Would a uniform minimum wage that's improved, shall we say, lower the antagonism of Intifada and white supremacy, or that has nothing to do with it, in your opinion?
Well, I think that it should be a free market or free, I don't know. I mean, as it is, I don't think that it's because of, like, for example, people working in a restaurant, people working in a restaurant or people working in a hotel. I know the what's being said is that it's Blacks who have the lower jobs.
Right,
and so
right.
I mean, I don't really think that is the issue because it's more about, this whole thing about white supremacy and systemic racism. It's more than just how much people make per hour. And, that's so ridiculous because people have equal, well, I know this is controversial, but there are a lot of Black people of all different races, nationalities, and so on, who work their way up. And there is America, the land of opportunity. They really are opportunities. And I don't think, that's, yes, I know that is what's said and so on, but it's more than that.
Well, you broached something. You mentioned Chinese. Now, this anti-Chinese hatred, is that a result, do you think, of the Antifa, the Black Lives Movement, or is it because COVID initially came from Wuhan? Or do you think it's a bit of both in back of that, what we see now as anti-Asian?
I think it's primarily that coronavirus came from Wuhan. It's amazing when you read the news, like even today, it's like they're making it as new news that, oh yes, indeed, it may well have leaked from the Wuhan lab. We knew that. Fauci has gone back and forth with us saying, whether he admits to that or not, it's like ridiculous. But we've known that for a long time, that it did come from the Wuhan lab and might well have been an agent of bioterrorism. So I don't understand why there's still, why it's news that they're rediscovering it again and again, because more things get leaked out. I think if China were, even at this point, were honest about saying, yes, we did have these people who did have COVID before we told the rest of the world and so on, I think there would be less hate against the Chinese. It's just the Chinese, it's not really about Chinese people. It's about being angry and fearful about COVID.
You know what? I agree with you. And by the way, you're beautiful, you're smart. Did you have your COVID vaccine yet? I want you to be around for a long time. Sorry, I'm asking you a personal question.
That's okay. I don't mind. No, I don't have it. I haven't gotten it, and I don't plan on getting it for a number of reasons, notably that I don't want to put something into my body that has not been proven. Of course, I haven't gotten a flu vaccine ever either for the same reason. I don't want to put strange stuff into my body. But also, it is a statement against the whole concept of vaccine passports and, you know, all of that, the mandates.
Freedom, I guess.
Yes.
Freedom of choice.
Exactly. I mean, I think everybody needs to have free choice about what they want to do or not. I mean, I wasn't so much, it didn't bother me as much about the masks, although yes, I think everybody should have free choice with that too. But the pushing of the vaccines, which are making certain people rich, you know, the big pharma and Fauci and Gates and all of that, you know, we can't trust it. Plus, one thing that's really scary is not to give kids. I mean, they're pushing the vaccine for kids,
right, down to
12 to 15 and even younger. They're working on trying to make it younger. And we've seen now there's been a reaction, myocarditis in some kids, teens and young adults. There have been some that have turned up having myocarditis, inflammation of the heart, after getting the vaccine. So there's no way that you can know for kids that this is safe, because kids still have growing brains, growing hearts, growing everything. And there haven't been 10 years, for example, of research on this. So there's no way to know that it's safe for kids.
Or even 2 years when you think about it, or even
yes.
You know, right. May I make a wish for you?
Sure.
Knock screen. I hope you stay well. Stay well, okay? My other...
I just want to say I'm not like just willy-nilly, you know, just saying, no, I'm not going to get a vaccine and doing nothing. I do things. I have recommended this whole anagram of things to do, which have to do with building up your immune system. You know, this is what the public health campaign should have been about from the beginning. Things
where can our viewers get that information?
Well, I will, I guess, I'll put it on I'll put it on Twitter.
Great. Thank you. Since you mentioned about Israel and Intifada and Black Lives Matter taking a rather negative view of Israel, what do you think of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a staunch Republican, coming out and saying that mask wearing equates it with wearing the yellow Star of David during the Holocaust?
Well, I mean, although she has said some outrageous things, so I can't like totally endorse her, but, you know, there is something to that. There certainly we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism all over the world, particularly brought out with the Palestinian war, reminding people and promoted by Black Lives Matter, as I was saying before, with the riots and so on. There is this whole idea of labeling people, making it obvious, you know, who you are. You know, one thing that I found interesting last weekend, or the weekend before, actually, right after CDC announced that people who are vaccinated don't have to wear masks. I went to an event over the weekend, a horse show, and there were lots and lots of people. And about 2/3 of the people weren't wearing masks. And what was interesting to me was, and I was wearing a mask some of the time. It was outdoors, really.
You're so pretty. I'm glad you're not wearing one now.
So what was interesting was people who were wearing masks, you know, who essentially identified them either as someone who wanted to be especially overly safe or take extra precautions, or somebody who didn't get the vaccine. So what happened was strangers would ask people who were wearing masks, why didn't you get the vaccine? You should get the vaccine. This whole judgment and criticism, and it's
division, yes.
And division, yes. Assuming, of course, that you must not have gotten the vaccine if you were wearing a mask, but and wanting you to get the vaccine, not for your health, but for their health. Which doesn't make any sense, because if you got the vaccine and somebody didn't, you're protected anyway. So, everybody's very confused, and largely because all of these so-called authorities have been switching back and forth more often than they change their underwear, especially Fauci.
It's like a ping pong. It's like a ping pong game, just going back and forth and back and forth. Now, I'll tell you the reason why I wear a mask, okay? I'm a little over 60, okay? And I have these very deep lines here. And when I go out, wear a mask, no one can see it. So I do it for vanity reasons. How do you like that? What do you see? Where do you think we'll be, let's say, in the fall? Do you think this will all be over? I mean, I'm a so-called travel expert. I've been invited to do press trips, whatever, back in Italy and France and whatever. Now, those countries are, I think, even behind our vaccination schedule. Do you think it'll be safe once you're in a plane and it's safe to land in a country that is still under the pandemic more than we are even? What's your wise opinion here?
Well, it sort of changes every day. I mean, it's interesting, though, because a lot of countries in Europe or different countries around the world, some are saying they won't allow Americans in or anybody in unless you've been vaccinated. So that's, that is sort of like the vaccine passport, really. I don't know. I love to travel. I actually was, before COVID came, I was on my way. I had just started traveling in Europe and so on, promoting my latest book, which is Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time.
Wait. Please give it to me again. I want to buy it. I'd love to meet you someday. You autograph it. Please give it to me again, slowly.
Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My,
Okay.
How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror.
Wow.
And it's a book. The first half of the book is for parents and teachers, grown-ups, how to talk to your kids about terrorism and those kinds of things. And the second half is a picture book for kids, like Terrorism 101 or Terrorism Light. And it's won lots of awards. And I was on my way. I gave talks in France and in London, England, actually Manchester too. I donated books to the Manchester Library because of their attacks. And then COVID came. So I've had to put a temporary halt. So I would like very much to feel safe going to various countries, and we will. I don't know when that will be.
You know what? Maybe we should go back to France and Britain. I'm supposed to do a lecture series at RIBA, and no, that's not a slur against anyone from the South. It's Royal Institute of British Architects. And also, I'm supposed to lecture at the Musée Jacques Marandré in Paris. That's all been called off. So hopefully, in fact, I'm just looking at my cell phone now, and I see that supposedly by the end of the month, 46% of the EU will have the COVID vaccine.
Uh-huh.
So when do you plan on returning and doing what you should do now? Before now, have you rescheduled yet?
I'm hoping things will be pretty open, at least by the 20th anniversary of September 11th.
Oh God, yes, you're right. Speaking of PSD, what do you think is going to happen on that day? Is it going to be like our grandparents or my grandparents? You're younger than I am. My grandparents with Pearl Harbor. Everybody knows where they were. And until they died, it was like September 7th. Do you think it's always going to be a stigma and a day for depression, or a day for reflection and honoring those who died.
Well, what I am most concerned about in terms of 9/11 is that people in America, particularly, of course, that people continue to memorialize it. Over the years, it has gotten less because fewer and fewer people were around in 20 years ago on that date. And they're not teaching it to their children as much, which is part of why I did this book. But I hope, there are these wonderful museums in New York celebrating, acknowledging, showing mementos and so on of 9/11. And each generation has to keep learning about this.
Yes.
Or, they say those who forget history are bound to repeat it.
The same thing with eating food that I prepare. Anybody who eats my food is doomed to repeat it. Here's another question. Oh, yeah. This is on the news. Gunshots were heard near George Floyd Square on the anniversary of the murder. So it's like this continues.
I'm surprised. I predict, I have been sort of predicting on my Twitter feed from talking about I did a podcast, BLM bringing Hamas-Israeli war to American streets. From that to, yes, I predict there's going to be riots and violence and gunshots and all of that today and probably continuing this week. And part of that is due to PTSD. Part of it is due to a lot of anger. Part of it is due to how once you start going down that road, the sort of the thrill of rioting, it's hard to put that genie back in the box.
What's happening now is the Middle East is being brought to our shores in Times Square. In fact, I just have this bulletin. NYPD arrests another suspect in the beating of a Jewish man in Times Square. When will this end? And this may sound prejudiced, but do you read about many Jewish men and women beating up people who are their enemies? I haven't yet, and maybe they should all take karate and judo now. Half seriously, half a joke.
I know. Jews and especially Israel are great at defending themselves, but we are not I'm an American Jew, and we are not an aggressive people. I mean, we don't start the wars or start aggression, which really does, of course, whether it's in Israel or in the United States, put Jews at a disadvantage because our enemies are very happy to be aggressive.
No, you're very bright, you're beautiful, and you exude optimism to me. Do you have an optimistic future that someday there will be peace, there'll be a peaceful Palestinian state and Israel, and there'll be partners and friends? Or do you think this will go on for another, I don't know how long, 75 or 80 years into eternity? What do you think?
Well, I had optimism, a lot of optimism, when President Trump was around, and especially when he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. That was so exciting. However, now that he's not in the White House, I am pessimistic because, see, what people don't, it's great that we have a ceasefire temporarily, but what people don't understand is that we could have ceasefire after ceasefire, and Iran has made no secret of the fact that they want to destroy Israel, death to Israel, death to America. So whatever peace plans or a two-state or whatever kind of arrangement is made, Iran isn't going to let it stay. Until Israel's destroyed, Iran is going to keep this up. Iran is fueling and paying for Hamas, and they're just going to keep up the fighting.
You know, when you say about Iran, they have other problems with their own people. I read about a week or two ago that there was a family, they found out I think it was their son was gay, and they beheaded him. I mean, now he was not, and suddenly they found out their son was an Israeli sympathizer and beheaded him. But something something that he can't help. Don't they show own compassion to their own, at least their own family?
There's a lot of hypocrisy. Same thing with Black Lives Matter supporting Palestinians. They don't recognize that there are Black Israelis and Black Jews, Ethiopian Jews, for example. So there's so much hypocrisy going on just to fit their narrative.
Wow. Now, there's something that I just saw here about, I think it's the Friends reunion. And hold on one second, please. Something about Matthew Perry in the Friends is slammed for bad taste. Okay, as he's put on weight, so it can't be that kind of taste because obviously he's still eating. But do you know anything about
Joey put on weight? I was not happy to see Joey putting on weight. But anyhow, yes, I know there has been talk about how Matthew Perry seemed to be slurring his words and just seemed to be sort of out of it and so on. I hope, we shouldn't. He needs help. So I hope that it's too bad that he didn't get help before this reunion so that he could, wouldn't have people talking about him in this way. He knew the reunion was coming up, but when you have an addiction or whatever his problem is, you can't necessarily stop it just because something is coming up, like a television reunion.
Yeah, Dr. Carole, apparently he's selling T-shirts that say, "Can I be any more vaccinated?" And it's creating a controversy.
Yes, I heard about that too.
Excuse me, he's selling them in the large size. At least if it were a slimmer size, fine, okay.
Yes, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Can we be any more vaccinated? What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know. Now, you're located in where? Beverly Hills? Your practice is in Beverly Hills? Okay. If he's still in California and he wants to contact you, would you have...
The number to call is...
Okay, here, do the number. Matthew, if you're listening, okay, I think you have a time slot later today or tomorrow in your schedule, or you can always make one for Matthew.
I can make one for him.
Okay.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I guess he just for the fact that he was making money off of COVID is the controversy.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe that goes along with whatever is ailing him in general that seemed to show up at the reunion.
What do you think, without examining him, the last question, what do you think is bothering him?
Well, I haven't examined him, so I don't know for sure, but a lot of times stars who were super popular, especially for child stars, he wasn't exactly a child. None of them were children per se when they did Friends, but they were years younger. And a lot of times when actors in particular were very super popular and then they're not, gets very, when the spotlight is off them, it gets very depressing. And it was apparently hard for a number of them to get work after because they were so typecast, they would always be seen as a member of Friends rather than whatever the role was that would be offered to them.
I can see if they were on a show called Enemies instead of Friends. Whoa, I don't want to go there. I don't want to hire anybody. But still, I can imagine people thinking, oh, gee, they're stuck in that image. People should be sophisticated enough to know that somebody on television is not necessarily how they feel. Nobody could ever tell that I'm suicidal, right? Okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much.
I make room for you too.
Thank you. Thank you so much, America's psychiatrist, and hopefully someday mine too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job, Dr. Carole. Thank you so much.
Always.
Thank you.